This way I only have to build one building block for my same. All the clocks are going to be the same. So we think about that when we start going in. Or I might say, you know, I'm going to have different profiles for my languages. I'm going to have a different profile for my UK, my US, and my Canada. So now I'm going to have three building blocks for languages, three language building blocks that I'm going to have to set up inside here, in there. But these language building blocks, this language building blocks I create for the UK is going to be used in all 15 of my devices. So I don't have to create a new building block every time I have a new device. I can use that one building block as many times as I need to, and I'll be able to use it. The U.S. is going to have one building block. They want it in U.S. English inside here. And I'm going to use that same building block for all these clocks in the different U.S. in there. And then Canada up here would like to have a different language set. So we'll set up one. So we end up with three, but I can use that same building block over and over as many times as I want to. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, one reason we need to think about our language, our naming convention. This is where I want to start off by talking about naming convention. So if I'm setting up a building block for languages that I'm going to use in the UK, when I name it, I might want to name it UK language in there. Here, I would name this one US language. This one, I would name it Canadian language inside there. This way, I have it and I know exactly where I'm going to use that same building block over and over again. When I need to apply it to a clock, one clock, then I have that set up there, that I have a good naming convention so I know which building block to assign to that one clock. Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit more later in here. But this is what we do. We set up, you start off thinking about one clock that I'm going to have. We're going to configure it. While we configure it, we might create some building blocks that I can use in all my clocks. Some of the building blocks can only be used in the US. Some of the building blocks I might only be able to use in the machine shop at the Metropolitan. So we'll see this as we go through. We create these building blocks for these clocks. And what we want to do is start off creating just the building blocks needed for the machine shop. Keep it in mind, I might be able to use that same building block in different plants or different countries. And you will see that as we go through, okay? Our device that we're going to use today, so this is kind of our setup. We're going to create one clock for the machine shop at the Metropolitan plant in the US of Acme Manufacturing. In there. The device is going to be InTouch device. They're going to use badges. Actually, we're going to be punching in and out, but they want to use proximity badges. These are some of the things that we think about what we want to do when we set it up. They're going to use biometrics. How many people in the class is going to use biometrics? Give me a check mark if you're going to use biometrics. That's where you have to put your finger in the clock. Got one person, two. All right, so we only have a couple of people that's going to use biometrics, but we need to talk about that. But this company does want to use biometrics, so we'll look at that inside there. We need some of our clocks are going to be PoE, which means power over Ethernet. Otherwise, we don't have to plug them in electricity. They're going to get their power coming across our Ethernet connection inside there. And then we have some that need remote readers. We're not going to talk about remote readers much, but I will give you an idea about them in here. So these are just some of the things that we look at. Another thing that we look at is what users have the ability to go in there and go into UDM. They have to have access rights to. We have three users up here. One user is going to be Holly Ivins. She's going to be our main user today. She is our HR administrator, but she is also the person that's responsible for setting up our time clocks. We need to make sure that they have the access rights to do that. Sean is our system administrator. He's kind of the person that I might be going to and asking for IP addresses and so forth that we might need to set up in the clock. Anna Clark is our HR manager. She might be the one that would be assigning the groups to our employees. She will be taking care of assigning groups to their employees inside there. So this is kind of the thing that we need to think about. Who's going to have access rights and what position will they take as far as setting these clocks up? So that's something else you kind of want to kind of write down as you go through inside there. Need support for multiple languages. I just talked about that. We're going to need the UK to have UK English. The US is going to have US English and Mexican Spanish. And Canadian clocks need to have US English and Canadian French. Canadian French, Canada French, French Canadian. I always heard French Canadian, but French Canadian is what they need their languages in. All we're going to do is set up one clock for the U.S. So we're going to set this building block up for these languages for the U.S. in there. All my U.S. clocks will use the same language format. Okay. And their configuration requirements, this is some of the things that they will talk to us about. Is it going to be device initiated or is it going to be server initiated? We'll talk about that when we go through. All of them will be device initiated. All your clocks will be device initiated. It's a requirement to use clocks within the cloud or within dimensions. The clocks will have to be device initiated. So what does device initiated means? It means I'm going out to the clock. The clock is going out to dimensions and logging into dimensions to set up communication. That's what they need to do. I need to set up communication between my clocks and dimensions, UDM and dimensions inside there. So the clock goes out and logs into dimensions, just like you would when you log into your network. Then there, that's device initiated. They will be. HTTPS, this is secure socket layer. It will be required for you to be able to use a secure socket layer, so we'll use that today. We're going to have a password so my device can log into it, so we're going to have to give it a password. Employee badges in here, it says they can use that here, proximity badges. We're going to be allowing our employees to key in badge ID. So when they go up to the clock, rather than swipe a badge or use a proximity badge which they hold within 6 inches of the clock and it registers the punch and so forth in there, we're going to type our badges in. Why? We have to do that with the simulator clock. And besides that, I don't have badges for everybody. So we're going to type in our badge number as we go through the clock. Biometrics is a requirement. We will talk about biometrics as we go through. We'll show you how to enroll employees with biometric and everything as we go through. Language verification, we already saw that inside there. This is some of the date formats. It's going to be a little bit different for different countries inside there. So the U.S. wants all their date formats on their clock to be month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. But Canada and UK wants it day, day, month, month, year, 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 year. So we have to think about that. These are some of the configurations that we look at in advance. Times, US and Canada want a 12-hour clock. The UK wants a 24-hour clock, or they want their clock to be in military time inside there. Primary and secondary messages, we are allowed to add a message to our clock, so we're going to put a message on there. Both countries want it, but the messages will be different for different countries in there. It's going to ask us some stupid questions, and I never quite got this, whether you want a rounded soft key or you want it horizontal inside there. Yeah, I'll show you what it means by that when we get to it. I always thought that was dumb, but just one of those things. They also said that on the clocks, instead of having a Chronos icon, they would like to have a Acme icon on their clocks. And I'll show you how you can replace that inside there too. So this is some of the things that we're talking about. Transactions they want to do, employee transactions, they need to punch in and out. So we need to put a punch on there so they can punch in and out. They want to view schedules. They want to do work rules, labor level transfers. We're not going to get into all that today, but this is some of the things that they will at the end want to have accomplished in there. Approve time cards, view their accrual balances, and so forth. So we'll try to set some of that up in there. I'll show you how to do it. Managers need to do other things. Now, what a manager transaction is what can the managers do for their employees? So they have to be able to log into the manager's mode to do that. You'll learn how to do that in this class inside here. They need to be able to punch. They need to be able to edit an employee's punch if they forgot to punch in, or if they need to go in there and change their punch or whatever it might be. Give them a vacation time or something like that. They can do that. View the online premises reports. They need to be able to enroll. If you're a Touch ID person, they need to be able to enroll the employee or unenroll the employee. So that's some of the transactions. This is where I was talking about. We'll come back to this when we get to this point in here, and that is naming convention. Naming convention for our clock. One of the things we have to do, if you've got 200 clocks, that's a lot of clocks. We have to come up with some way that we can name it. Each clock requires that you give it a device ID. That device ID has to be a 6-digit unique numeric number. It's got to be a 6-digit number, and it's got to be unique for each clock. We can use this opportunity as a way of defining a naming convention of how we want to create those numbers for each one of our clock. Actually, you can start off the first clock to be 000001. The next clock can be 00002, and on down the line to get all your clocks. But creating a naming convention for them is very good idea, especially when you get into larger. Once you get into over 50 clocks, the naming convention is going to be very critical to you. I say this because I'm really hard about naming conventions in this class in here. The reason I say this, I've worked with customers before. They come up to me and say, Jerry, man, our system, it's working, but it's so screwed up. We cannot change anything. We don't know how to change stuff in there. And it'd be so screwed up. The only thing we could do is delete everything and start over again. It was really in that bad a shape because they didn't take considerations of how they wanted to name it so they could understand what went to what clock and everything else inside there. It's critical. Especially you get over 50, you get to 200, you got to have this done. So we'll talk about how to do that as we go through, okay? Inside there. So this is just, we'll come back to that. By the way, this is in the back of your book. Everybody should have downloaded their task guide. In the back of the task guide, I had them put this in here to talk about how to do this naming convention like we're going to do in class. So we'll come back to that as we come through there inside there. Functional access profile, we need to make sure the right people have the right access profile set up for them. Functional access profile says, can I go in and create? Can I go into UDM? Can I go in and do certain things inside there? Can I go in and assign my groups to my employees and things like that, roles that we do? We're going to have functional access inside there. So we'll talk about that. Device profile building blocks. We're going to go through each building block and then configuring the labs inside there, configuring our clocks in here. This is functional access profiles of what they're talking about. There are certain profiles that they need access rights to. As a manager, we have your device administrators that need access to be able to set up devices and profiles, monitor and troubleshoot inside there. You'll see how this sets up as we go through there. We have our HR people that need to be able to assign device groups to the users inside there, be able to change their badges, and be able to check on their biometric enrollment in here. And then we have the person that needs to go in and go in there and do common setup inside there. Use the people editor to specify device groups inside there, biometrics, UDM setup to create what we're going to be doing in UDM today. Functional access profile, you've got to make sure that you have it. There's so many people that will come to my class and they'll sit in there and say, okay, now I know how to do it. I'm going to go back to my system and go back to dimensions and I'm going to start setting up UDM. When they get in there, this is the first thing they say. Wow, this don't look like anything what Jerry showed me. Jerry's just, man, that was just what Jerry showed me. It doesn't look anything like it. It's most likely because you don't have the access rights to it. We'll talk about access rights as we go through further inside here, okay? Inside there. This is the functional access control. So we have a person up here that's going to log in. When they go up, they go to their main menu. We'll talk about that in here. It's a little bit inside here, a little bit confusing because there's two different places we have to go through. Down to maintenance is people information. This is timekeeper information. This is where we assign our groups to. Once we create our groups, you'll see we assign them here. Underneath administration, we go down to devices. We go down to devices inside there. Let me see who's got, oh, Vanessa. Okay, go Vanessa inside here. Vanessa, we're just kind of getting started here, so you're in good shape. You haven't missed too much yet. Okay. Vanessa, where's your thing at? Oh, there it is. Vanessa, okay. All right, now, so when we come in here, this is kind of where we go. We're going to have access to devices. Now, devices is where we can go in and we could look to make sure the devices are set up, make sure they're working and everything else. But to actually go in and set up our devices, we have to go to device. Sorry, I got stuck in it. That's okay. You're